Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. As always, I am your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. We are joined today by the swim scribe himself, David Clossy from St. Cloud, Minnesota, as well as SwimSwam writer Sophie Kaufman, also in New York. Remind me, are you in Brooklyn or Manhattan, Sophie?
I'm in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I'm just so left out here.
You gotta make the move east, David.
All in the same time zone. I don't need to add central every time I text you what time works for me.
Exactly. Have you guys gotten a lot of snow, David?
Yeah, we got a decent amount, like a few, but it's also like been super windy too. And so it's been, like, even when it's not, actively snowing, it's like, yesterday it wasn't a whole lot of snow, but it looked like it was snowing all day. And it was, things that were clear suddenly aren't. And we have a lot of issues of, stuff kind of gets on the roads and then it melts and then freezes at night. And so everyone's kind of skating around a little bit. At the end, I made a decent drive on Saturday where everyone was basically going like 40 and a 70 because that was about the safest top speed you could go. And it was like, all right, I'm gonna be locked in for the next half hour of driving here. This is normally where I zone out, but everyone around me was fine. I only saw like one car in the ditch and they seemed like it was a pretty mild, just like went over, not like a rollover or anything like that. So that was good. Everyone's kind of used to it this time of the year. It's normally the first snowfall that gets people.
That is good. I mean, I feel like we have not, for all the snow that the Midwest has gotten, or I've heard about, like, I think it snowed twice in Brooklyn and it's been like an inch, if that, each time.
Yeah, you just gotta come to the city, and then you get the wind tunnels going up the avenues, and that's a lot of fun.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of wind here too. But, we're not here to talk about the snow or the wind. We're here to talk about the water, and specifically the chlorinated water. So with that, we had a lot of exciting swimming. I feel like the NCAA season really picked back up after the holidays this past weekend. We saw a lot of top teams in action. I'm going to highlight the top women's team, Virginia, first. We saw UVA take on Virginia Tech, where the women had a pretty staunch victory for UVA. That was highlighted by Gretchen Walsh's 20.7 in the 50 fly. Is that correct? That sounds so wrong when I say it. But she's fastest split of all time, 50
20.87.
20.8? Good God. She outsplit their freestyler. And I think, that would outsplit anyone on a freestyle relay aside from herself and maybe, Maggie McNeil or Gretchen Walsh. It's so fast. She's been swimming really, really lights out all season. We saw what she did at the Short Course World Championships. But it didn't seem like there wasn't a lot of buzz around this specific swim. And obviously, we've been seeing a lot of Gretchen swimming fast for the last few months and the last few years. But do you feel like this is a Katie Ledecky-esque situation where she is swimming so fast so often that fans are just getting tired? Like, you can only get so excited about a 50 fly split, even if it's the fastest of all time. Sophie, I'm going to throw this one to you first.
I think, that's a little bit what's happening, but I also think that this is kind of, we're going to talk a little bit later about the product of swimming as a whole. And I think college swimming fans are really used to January being kind of dead air. So I think there's a lot less eyeballs on college meets in January, like in general, especially because you've got, conference championships coming up and then NCAA championships. Like, that's really where the focus is starting to turn. And so I think traditionally there's been a lot of, well, nobody's going to go fast in January anyway. And we're slowly starting to see that not be true anymore, whether it's, Gretchen or ASU last year really leading this charge of you can swim fast at any time in the season. It doesn't matter. So I think that hopefully swims like this continuing to happen in January will have people paying more attention at this time of the year.
David?
Yeah, like you kind of mentioned. Also, actually, first of all, talking about context and how fast the swim is, talking about outsplitting freestylers. Gretchen Walsh also would have made the Virginia Tech men's C relay because their fly split was a 20.88.
Ooh.
So
It's
just for
crazy.
some, in case if you're having a hard time piece together how fast that is, it's fast. I think you're definitely, I think, onto something with the timing of the swim being a major factor, Sophie. With I think for me, the first thing I thought of is less the fact about, people are expecting it to be kind of like still slow in the swimming news cycle, maybe aren't paying as close of attention to swimming. I think that's a huge factor, as well as I think the fact that the last big, push of like results based swimming news was Short Course Worlds, which was Gretchen Walsh, Gretchen Walsh, Gretchen Walsh, Gretchen Walsh, kind of a lull. Then we're right back to Gretchen. There's nothing to break it up. It's just like, oh, it feels like it's in addition to kind of that Katie Ledecky effect of you've gone so fast so often that everyone gets kind of desensitized to what actually is a stupid, insane fast swim, is the fact that there was no buffer. I think if we had a couple other swimmers do something noteworthy that generate some headlines and gets people going, oh man, fast swimming's here, and then she popped that swim, maybe like a week or two after, I think there might have been more focus on it. But I think since it was just all Gretchen Walsh news compacted together, I think even throughout the course of Short Course Worlds, felt like by the end of it, it's like, how many world records she break today? All right, cool.
It's kind of funny seeing all of her accolades rack up too, especially just a few days ago, the Iron Lady herself, Katinka Hozu, retired, and you saw all of her accolades. She had 300 plus World Cup gold medals, 400 plus World Cup medals, so many world records. And it's like we are witnessing another person, another athlete of that caliber, like blossoming in front of our eyes right now. And even then, it's like you can only handle so much. Like I can't get so excited for this, even if it is so historic. And I think that's the thing about athletes like Katie Ledecky or Katinka Hozu or Gretchen Walsh. Like, it does matter the time and the place that they are swimming historic swims, but they are also just doing it all of the time. And so the context around those swims does matter. I agree with you both, but it was kind of surprising to me to see it not get more attention or hype than it did, because it's like, well, dang, I mean, that's like the fastest of all time by like a significant margin. And it is a 50 fly split, right? It's not like it didn't break any official record. I was going through the comments of that article. Someone said this is 10 times more insane than her 19 free split. 20.87 fly split is absolutely diabolical. We're not even 10 minutes in, but let's get a quick sink or swim. I just want to poll the room. Do you think this 20.8 is more impressive than a 19.950 free, David?
I don't think so, and that might just be a bias towards breaking like those kind of like it feels like going under, once you change the tens place too on the barrier that you're breaking down, going from 20 to 19, that's always just going to feel more significant. That's a very subjective thing, but I feel like once you get to this level of insane swimming, I think a little subjectivity gets a bit involved there, and so I would put, even if you did say that the fly split's more impressive, I don't think it's 10 times.
Fair enough. Sophie?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fly split, it depends what metric you're using, right? Like the fly split is almost a second faster than anybody else has ever gone before Gretchen started breaking this unofficial record. The fastest was Maggie McNeil's 21.85. And, we've had 20.350 freestyle splits before, but I agree with David, 20 seconds has been such a significant barrier in the sport in yards and also now in meters for such a long time that anytime somebody is the first under that barrier, it is going to be really, like, it is just going to be an incredibly significant swim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was a really impressive swim. And again, like you said, Sophie, the next fastest human aside from herself is almost a second slower, which is just nuts. I mean, she's revolutionizing butterfly, I think, much like Caleb Dressel did in yards, and much like, again, these great athletes on both male and female, like Katinka, like Katie Ledecky. They're revolutionizing their events. So it's pretty crazy to see. I didn't have this on the list, but again, I'm just reading through the comments and I totally forgot. Katie Grimes made her UVA debut. And she's now already 3 for 3 in college events. She won the 2 fly, the 2 back, and the 2 IM. I think the 2 IM she won by like 2 or 1/100th or 2 100ths. Very slim margin, but she's undefeated in college competition. And that's saying something because she was racing against her UVA teammates. I think she beat Alex Walsh in the 200 fly. She beat Amy Caney in the 200 IM. So she's not racing scrubs. Any initial thoughts? I know I'm springing this on you, but did that surprise you? Did that was like, oh yeah, Katie Grimes, cool. Any initial thoughts on Mrs. Grimes's college debut?
I feel like I'm very much in the, oh yeah, Katie Grimes, cool. It's confirming that she's going to keep doing good things. And I guess, more than anything is there hasn't been any immediate, oh wow, it's really not a good fit. Things aren't going well. There's no like alarm bells going in the background, which I didn't expect. I wasn't, like breathing a sigh of relief. But I think it's, it's cool to see some fast swimming right away. I'm glad to see that, with an athlete of her caliber, that things seem to be trending in a positive direction. And the biggest thing it did is just fuel more excitement to see what she can get done at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is just a complete case of the rich getting richer for Virginia. Katie Grimes is here now. Alex Walsh made her NCAA season debut after returning to competition at Short Course World. So I agree with what David said. And I also think it'll be really interesting to see how they use her going forwards. 2 fly, 2 IM, I think 2 back is like a pretty, standard lineup for an NCAA dual meet for someone with Katie Grimes' specialties. We didn't see her in the 500 free or the 1,000, but you have to assume at some point they'll, put her in there. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of lineup she takes on during conferences and NCAAs.
Man, yeah, it's the rich get richer is like almost an understatement, right? Like, I was at Virginia filming with their team. The day I left was the day before Katie Grimes got there, which I'm salty about. But I was talking to one of their coaches and they're like, we've had some really good teams in the last 4 years. They are the 4-time defending champions on the women's side, NCAA champions. He's like, we've had some really good teams in the last 4 years. I think this is going to be our best team. Like, I think we will win NCAAs by the biggest margin of points that we've ever won this year. And that's saying something, right? I mean, that's it's insane to think about. But I am glad that Katie Grimes made her college debut. I'm glad we get to see Katie Grimes swim in college because that was in question for quite a while. I mean, she took a gap year leading into the Paris Olympics, and then we weren't sure what her plans were after that for a long while. So I'm just glad that she is swimming in the NCAA and we get to see her rip some sick yards times.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about, like, Virginia. We ran an article on this, I think, when it was announced that Katie Grimes was coming to Virginia, that I think it's like 7 NCAA records that the UVA women don't own. Like, it's easier to count the ones they don't own as opposed to the ones they do. And what Katie Grimes could help them get, can they get the 800 freestyle relay with Katie Grimes and Gretchen Walsh on that relay?
Ooh, how do you think Katie Grimes can approach Katie Ledecky's NCAA distance records?
I don't know.
Or Ella Easton's 400 IM record. she certainly gets them closer to a lot of those records they don't own, right?
Yeah.
We've also got seemingly Alex Walsh, I think, is going to be swimming the 100 breast come postseason, from how she was training and what she indicated when I sat down and chatted with her in Charlottesville. So we could see another UVA NCAA record there. Man, they're just really covered in all bases. Is all that is. Let's switch to the men's side, where we've been talking about Texas and Indiana all season. And sorry, swim fans, it's not going to stop now, because we saw former Texas Longhorn turned Indiana Hoosier Caspar Corbeau make his season debut with the Hoosiers, and he looked great. And then Chris Giuliano, formerly of Notre Dame, now with the Texas Longhorns, make his season debut. They both looked sensational. I mean, it seems like they have both improved since we last saw them swim a yard swim, because these in-season times are elite from both of them. I believe Caspar was 51 in the 100 breast, 151 in the 2 breast, 22.7 or 22.8 in the 50 breast on the relay. Giuliano splitting 18.5 on an anchor in the 200 medley relay. He was 41 plus in the 100 free. I believe he was, I want to say
41-1 on the relay split, and then 19-0 in the individual event.
Yeah, both won everything he was on. What, David, let me throw it to you first. What'd you think of seeing these two season debut, and has it changed your view of any potential NCAA outcome on the men's side?
It's definitely reinforced the fact that, at least for me, because these are the two teams, like you alluded to at the start, like these are the ones that are in the conversation the most about, how it's like, Texas, Indiana, Cal's lurking somewhere. It's basically been it feels like the conversation for the NCAA team race this season. And those, obviously, with those being very notable pickups, are, it's kind of, you want to compare, if you're thinking that they're kind of even, which one's going to push them ahead more. And I'm thinking that Chris Giuliano really showed that he is in incredibly good form and is in the position to make a massive impact for the Longhorns, just because of the events he swims. Sprint freestyle in the NCAA is super important. And also the relative void that he's filling on the team he's on, because Texas is a lot weaker in sprint freestyle without Chris Giuliano than Indiana is in breaststroke without Caspar Corbeau. Take him away, they're still pretty good. Take Giuliano away in those sprint freestyles, they're in a lot worse of a spot. And when this was first announced that he was, going to be going to Texas, and when people are still like, I think he's maybe competing this year, not sure what the plan is there, and that everything else kind of up in the air, I looked into the potential relay impact, and I basically took the splits he went in that, at NCAA swimming for Notre Dame that year, and just plugged them into the Texas relays, not factoring in any other improvements that I would have made this year. Just if that had happened, like, snap your fingers and it happens last year. The biggest, I flipped to my page in the notes I make for videos on this, just because I still had it written down. The biggest jump would have been that 200 free relay from 19th out of scoring position to 9th, just from plugging in his split from that relay there. Other things like the 400 free relay from 12 to 6, bumping into the A final, 9th to 5th on the 200 medley. Only a small jump in the 400 medley, but that's because he's replacing Luke Hobson, who's good in the 100 free. And then you open up the conversation of, when you have multiple people who are good in 100 free, you can plug Luke Hobson in that 200 free relay. He wasn't on it. Maybe if you can push up even higher from 9th, or if you load both of them onto that 800 free relay, how much can you smash an NCAA record by? I don't know. They've got a lot of weapons in that event. So Chris Giuliano, I was very much anticipating his debut, just to see, is he going to be the game changer for Texas? I mean, the fact that they were a major part of the conversation for the NCAA team title without a ridiculous sprint free group is saying something. And now you're building that sprint free group out, and that's pretty crazy. And then, for Indiana's credit, obviously they've been looking really good, especially in that their most recent dual meet. And while, yes, they did have a strong breaststroke group, even without Caspar, I am a very big believer in the importance of a strong training group, and adding more pieces to any group like that is not only going to sharpen their overall breaststroke group as a whole, but the team as a whole too. The more people you have in that kind of really higher tier performance, I think is, iron sharpens iron when you're racing people day in and day out. So I think that they both have shown that they're going to make a big impact at the end of the year. But I think if I had to pick which one, I'd give it the slightest of edges to Guiliano.
Yeah. Sophie?
Yeah. We've been doing power rankings at various points throughout the season. We did one pre-invites, we did one post-invite, but before Corbeau announced that he was going to be going to Indiana, I had Texas at number 1 then. And I think that that's still true, even though Corbeau, he doesn't just bring breaststroke skills. He was also on plenty of Texas sprint freestyle relays and will be a big help for Indiana in that department as well. And then you've got, Matt King and Rafael Miroslav are back for Indiana. They both sat out for the first semester. Matt King was there training. Miroslav was on the World Cup circuit. So they're bringing, more sprint freestyle skill for Indiana, which is going to really help their relays. I think what's kind of thrown this all up in the air for me even more is, that there have been a lot of announcements on the men's side of people who are now confirmed to be out for the rest of the semester or are in the transfer portal. You've got Adam Chaney and MacGuire McDuff, who are on Florida's roster, who are currently in the portal. Noah Nichols isn't swimming the rest of the semester for Virginia. And so then you've got Aiden Hayes and Arsenio Bustos out for NC State. So I think whichever team is going to be able to pick up the most of those points that are now kind of up for grabs, so to speak, is going to be the one who kind of comes out on top of this. And then, of course, you have to factor in Indiana's diving as well. I think for me, Texas still holds the edge. But, with Noah Nichols out, you've got to think that there's a lane in the A final of the 100 and 200 breaststroke open. And that's a spot for Indiana to really kind of put this away.
That's a great point. Yeah. I mean, I feel like those stories have been just as prevalent. I really don't think we will see Adam Chaney or MacGuire McDuff resurface on another team this year, but we're going to talk about them specifically a little bit later. I don't think there's going to be any more surprise additions to NCAA title contenders is what I'm saying. But in terms of these two, I think it has been so exciting. It's made the narrative so much more fun as spectators, because as we saw this weekend, Corbeau and Guiliano are two swimmers who are in their prime and also on such upward trajectories just in terms of their swimming. Caspar won an Olympic medal this summer, as did Guiliano. They are both just peaking right now. And they both Caspar had a great fall at the World Cup. He's been training in the Netherlands, and it seems like he's just getting more and more confidence and experience racing. And then Guiliano, again, developed so much at Notre Dame and seems to have not missed a beat going to Texas. We're not exactly sure when he arrived in Austin, but both of them are just so, again, on a great trajectory. And then getting to see that they neither of them have missed a beat seemingly, and maybe even gotten better since arriving to Indiana and Texas, that it's going to make this team race that much more exciting. Just as a side note, Sophie, you mentioned Caspar bringing a little, more than just breaststroke. He split 42-1 on their winning 400 free relay this past weekend. So, I mean, and I know he had swam butterfly on Texas's 200 medley relay at one point, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, he has scoring potential in the 200 IM individually. He can be slotted into free relays. He's obviously an elite breaststroker. It's like he's a real Swiss Army knife. He can bring a lot. I think I'm with you guys that Guiliano is I think a higher impact swimmer in terms of filling in holes, because Texas's sprint free was a big one. But it is really a toss up for me at this point. I feel like the stars are starting to align for Indiana. Like, I think in the fall, everyone was kind of like, do they look good? I can't tell. And even the commenters for this past weekend were like, what's happening with Indiana? Why are they swimming so fast? This is weird.
What are they up to?
Yeah,
They're going to the well.
Like, you're not supposed to do that now. But to me, that's just like, that's how the NCAA has like, that's what it is now, is that like you kind of build throughout the whole season. You don't peak and valley as much. I think coaches are finding that like athletes can race really fast and still be getting better and still be getting faster. And so to me, that's what Indiana looks like. And I think we got a glimpse of like their full team this weekend, and I liked what I saw. So,
Sophie raised the point of Indiana's diving as well. And I hadn't even thought about that, but how hilarious would it be if Texas loses the NCAA title because of diving?
That'd be so
I never
great.
even considered that scenario, but like it seems so obvious where it's like the reversal. Well, if you subtract diving points, they actually won.
Right.
I mean, I think what's been really impressive to go back to your point, Coleman, about Indiana and how strong they've looked all season, is that they've been doing it against like other top 10 programs. You know, they went to Texas in the fall and they just raced Florida last week. And, you know, even they performed well at both of those meets. They lost to Texas. They won against Florida, you know, without this fully loaded team that we just saw take on Michigan and win. So the fact that they've been performing so well against these teams that are right up at the top of the NCAA as well, like, is a really strong sign for them.
Mm-hmm. They've certainly gotten plenty of opportunities to test their mettle. And I'm also curious if like losing to Texas, especially in the way they did, like they went to Texas and they kind of got their butts kicked. Like, I think in the morning it was close-ish, but that night it was not close. But I wonder if they're going to carry that chip on their shoulder. We can't disregard the fact that Texas beat the highly lauded SMU this past weekend, which I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
How is that program?
They're on the rise. SMU, I'm only saying this in jest because our commenters are memeing this into reality.
We've seen it happen with Dean Ferris.
We saw it happen with Dean Ferris. SMU is the next dream to meme scenario. So we'll see. But it was an exciting week of college swimming. Those are the main topics, and we've got several more topics to discuss via sink or swim, which we will begin now. First of all, we're going to start with a really broad one. Our own Yin Lee wrote an article that was fantastic about this. If you haven't read it, go read it. But David, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Sink or swim? Is swimming a bad product?
Yeah, I love this article. And also, you know, read the article, read the comments too, because there's a lot of extended discussion in that as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it stems from, I believe, like, you know, she's summarizing and reacting to a Reddit thread of people asking and answering that question. And there's a lot of ways you can come at this from, you know, is it a bad product? You know, so the discussion kind of wanders and drifts from what my main focus is on, like the broadcast product of like an Olympics, World Championships, World Cup, because you can also talk about age group meet or an NCAA dual meet. I think once you just start branching out from that, there's so many other factors and avenues on there. And I'm going to think that it's a bad product. I think that swimming, racing, as itself, the actual sport and competition swimming, very good product. I think it's a good product that is very often accompanied with bad packaging, because I think the main issue, if I had to, something that is probably would definitely take some effort to fix, but is kind of more of one single thing, is the pacing of a lot of meets. There's too much time for, in this day and age, everyone's attention span is microscopic, where when you don't have any action on screen or are struggling to find ways to properly fill that downtime, it's a lot of ways that you can just lose that audience retention, and they're going to go look for something else. So they're going to be like, man, this is boring. I had two minutes of racing. That was kind of cool. Oh, okay. Got to wait like 10 minutes for the next race, because they got to get them out of the pool. I got to do this. If there's, I think one thing that this is something that I don't know how hot of a take this is I think that I was thinking about this a lot at Short Course Worlds, because I thought that the World Cup had pretty good pacing. I think that one, they were really snappy with it. And it was, especially because this one I know isn't a particularly hot take in the comment section. No semifinals of the World Cup. So that helps. And I know that's definitely an opinion that gets thrown around, is, kind of cut them out in the, maybe the 200s, keep them in the 100s and 50s. But I think the other thing is medal ceremonies. I think that is, I agree that it is so important for the athletes to have that moment. That's their moment, especially in like an Olympic setting, in a world championship setting. I would maybe say push them to the end of the meet and do them there. They still get that moment in front of a crowd. But I guess would you rather also have that on the broadcast? Because people, big time swim fans, will hang around to watch, the live stream on Peacock that goes beyond, so you can actually see the stuff and it's not cutting away from commercial, and all that, whatever avenue is going to still have the broadcasted medal ceremonies. But I think, is it worth maybe losing some of the more casual viewers for the medal ceremony itself if you keep them to actually see your swim if you're at the end of the meet? And and then especially World Aquatics, if they just clip, and when they re-upload race videos, World Aquatics, Olympics, or NBC Sports on their YouTube channel, they always shove the medal ceremony on there anyway, so you'd still see it on replays and still live on in that way. Throw emotional moments and stuff like that throughout the broadcast, maybe the next day, recapping stuff like that. I also think an important thing that swimming should try and aim to do, this is a bit more, I think pacing is the overall thing that needs to be nailed, because as much as possible, minimizing the downtime from race to race to race, have a snappier schedule. And if you are in a position where you need to have more gaps because the athletes can't teleport around the pool, I get that. And you probably also want to make it easier for some athletes to do doubles, kind of facilitate better performances like that, is have more time slots dedicated for maybe providing context for the race. If you have 3 minutes of downtime that you can't squish the schedule for whatever reason, whether it's, whatever myriad of reasons logistically that would cause it to, like, we can't get them in the pool until this time. They need to put the backstroke wedges out, or something like that. And you have a few minutes. If you have whatever, people are in the broadcast booth, or if you have like a separate team, like, how during the Olympics, they have like Phelps, like talking to someone about like giving context, whereas, okay, here are the people in this final. If this person wins, they were seeded, there's a story for so many of these athletes that if you can provide that context, people who were flipping channels and are like, oh, swimming, if they don't know the athletes, they're like, oh, okay, where's my guy with the American flag on his, if it's an American viewer, right? I was like, where's the guy from my country? All right, I hope he wins. But if they go, oh, this person was like seeded 24th coming in, and now he's like, it's a miracle he made the final. I'm rooting for that guy. Like there's going to be some kind of story. And that wasn't a specific example of any swimmers. That was just a random thing I made up. If that happened, then I'll take credit for it, I guess. But I just think that you can utilize any moments that constantly be providing something to the audience. I feel like there's a lot of slow pacing and downtime that you really can't afford to have if you're trying to maintain the concentration of a casual viewer, because a swim fan's going to watch it no matter what. And I saw some takes in like the, some of like the Reddit posts and stuff like that were highlighted in the article that are talking about the events themselves. And, like some events, longer events being boring. I disagree with that. And that's why I say that swimming is a good product, because I disagree with those takes, because I do believe like examples like distance races. Most distance races are still fun to watch, because the only one that you could really say was even close to being boring would be like Ledecky in the 1500, because there's no one who's going to press her in that. The 800 was still interesting. Titmus was right there the whole time. And then 800 men's distance races have been just, I think I was out of my seat literally the entire 1500 because you have the race of, okay, Paltrinieri starting to close the gap on Fink, and then also that like sub race of, okay, I know how this world record line is going to go at the end. I'm watching like the splits and I'm seeing where it's going. You have a lot of things, and the 800 is always a dogfight too. And so I don't think the issue is with anything that's happening in the pool, in the event selection, in how we're framing and packaging the actual racing themselves. It's everything around it that can be improved.
Okay. Sophie, what do you think? Sink or swim?
I'm glad that you had David go first, because probably I was going to swim that swimming is a bad product, but David has convinced me that I should be sinking this. I really agree with him that like when you get down to it, like at the base, it is a good product, but it's kind of everything around it that is making it into a bad one, or is something that people are kind of, especially new fans, are bouncing off of. And I agree that I think that the World Cup and Short Course Worlds were really interesting testing grounds for some of these like tweaks that we can make. Not only did we see the combined medal ceremonies at Short Course Worlds, but we also saw them change the schedule, right? So we saw women's 50 free and then it was men's 50 free. So there was no kind of like, oh, what's coming next? I don't know what's about to walk out. And I think for new viewers, like Coleman, I think you made this point when we talked about this, that like, that's just so essential. I was really kind of taking this question from like, not the perspective of a diehard swim fan or someone who knows swimming really well, but someone who's just flipping through the channels, kind of coming to this as like someone who knows basically nothing about the sport. And I agree with a lot of David's points. And I really also think that like, in addition to the pacing, the context of this is like so important. And I think that's why I really liked the amount of interviews that they were trying to do with swimmers, both at the World Cup and at Short Course Worlds, because that's where you find a lot of these storylines. If you're a new viewer, right? Like if you turn on the channel and you don't know anybody in the 8 lanes, you're looking for a story or something that you can really latch onto in order to have a rooting interest in the race. And if you don't get a chance to hear from the swimmers or hear context about them from the people who are doing the broadcasting, then it's really hard to find a reason to care about the sport, other than, especially if you're a new fan and you don't understand the context of why everyone went crazy when Jordan Crooks broke 20 seconds in the 50 freestyle, right? So like that, you saw a really fast swim, but you don't totally understand why it was so significant. And like giving people the ability to understand those storylines, I think would do a lot into making swimming an interesting product that you don't have to have been a swimmer as a kid and like followed this whole sport. Like you can come to this as a new viewer and still appreciate it and learn something and be interested.
Fair enough. As a product of swimming as a whole, if it's a product, I'm swimming that it is a bad product. I don't think we do, because I think the product is what the consumer sees. And that's like that is the combination of what it is and how it's presented. And I think this is something that I don't know what casual fans thought of ISL, but I think it's something they did so well, was just push boundaries and gamify it so that it is so much easier to consume. You have teams, you have points, and you have people swimming often. And I think I think the last one is key, right? We are so used to seeing our athletes compete maybe once a month, in the college season, maybe twice a month, right? And which is ironic because I think our sport is moving more and more in a direction where you don't have to have this giant training block where you get broken down so much and then you can only swim fast once or twice at the end of the season. Like we are moving much, much more towards a place where we're seeing it in college. People are swimming fast all of the time. And I think that's something we saw in ISL a lot with the professional swimmers. And I think it's something that swimming as a whole should very much move towards, because the more people are swimming, the more opportunities there are for casual fans to tune in and watch. And then it kind of all stems from there. And then you start making, okay, why does this matter? And sometimes the argument is not very strong. Like in the in the NBA or the NFL, like you have these whole seasons and some of the games are just games, right? And they don't have a lot of context, or they don't have a lot that matters about them. But then you start making rivalries, or you start throwing in incentives like cash prizes on any given night of like, oh, okay, this person's maybe going for the world record or maybe trying to do this certain thing. And I think that could be a much better product for the casual viewer. I think as it stands now, you have college swimming, which is getting more fun. And I think there are lots of strides taken to make college swimming a better product. But I love what World Aquatics did with World Cup and Short Course Worlds. But now, from March until July, when World Championships are, or I guess starting in April, what are we going to see? Like, what's going to happen? Like, there's like a 4-month lull where I'm a little worried that like, what, like, I don't know anything exciting that's going to be going on aside from like international trials, which aren't very exciting around the world. And I think that's like a prime time to get more exciting swimming happening. So I think there's a lot of steps. I think right now, yeah, it's a bad product. It's not very fan friendly. I think I'm curious on your take. I was reading through the comments of the article. I'm curious on you guys' take on this specific part of it. People were saying people who were saying it was a bad product. One argument was that you know who's going to win. Like, you rarely go into a race and don't have an idea of like, okay, these 2 or 3 swimmers out of these 8 are going to win it. It's rarely that it's like any of these 8 swimmers could win this race. Do you think there is a solution to that? Or do you think there's a way to make it more accessible so that that's viable, so that you don't just have 1 or 2 people who are going to win?
There might be something that just, I feel like, tends to get fixed a little bit with deeper fields in like, because the more, just like, so I guess that would come down to increasing incentives and interest for athletes to attend meets, right? Like I'm thinking like in-season meets, obviously, like Olympics and Worlds, there are a lot of scenarios where anyone could win in more races than pro swim series, because I think it's also something, I think it can kind of get a little scary because you don't necessarily, this isn't a super actionable thing, but it's something that I think is trending that direction, that this feels like the sport overall is getting deeper. Like the fact that the lack of multi-event winners, especially on the men's side at the Olympics, or even multi-event winners, not just for individuals outside of Marchand. The only country that won multiple individual events other than France because of Marchand was Hungary. And I think Italy as well. I think they each won 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then Marchand won his events, and then every other event, different country. And of course, with that, different swimmer. And even those, Italy and Hungary, those were two different swimmers for that country. And I think my point here is that you're seeing a lot of deepening. It's kind of reminded me, I look a lot at track to kind of see almost as where swimming is. I feel like we're kind of lagging behind track just because it's been around longer. It figured out a bit faster, is more developed, things like world records that are going to be around for a long time, where you've kind of reaching closer to the ceiling of your performance and things like that. And it just is a lot more developed as a sport on the performance side of things. And I feel like they have a lot more races that are, who knows, anyone could go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a lot more surprises. And I think that's something that I don't know how to facilitate that outside of waiting, which isn't, might not be valid. If it takes 50 years, that sucks. I don't think that short term is going to be very fun. But so I think that the actionable thing would be find a way to get deeper pools of athletes that want to go to these in-season meets, whether that's financial incentive or just like making it like a fun time. And actually, one other thing outside of that kind of like foregone conclusion is I also think finding efforts to make sure that you can make sure people know these meets are going on too. Because I think outside of being a super locked in swim fan, the casual viewer, unless you happen to scroll by a channel that's showing a pro swim series, I mean, even as someone who pays attention to swimming, the two articles that are my lifelines for in-season meets are from SwimSwam are how to watch this meet and all the links you need. Those articles that come up for key meets, I'm like, oh, sweet. I forgot how I can view it. I don't know if this is like a broadcast contract issue. I wish USA Swimming would live stream more meets on YouTube because, and I also think it's for college programs too. Again, broadcast contracts probably make it difficult. The reason why I think it's a helpful thing to do is because YouTube is something that it says it has an algorithm. You can recommend you live streams while you're browsing YouTube. So there's discoverability there. There's a lot less discoverability on TV because your TV isn't like, hey, here's some shows you might like. Here's a swim meet. You need to go navigate to it. Compared to YouTube, it's like, oh, USA Swimming's live. Oh, there's a swim meet happening. Cool. I'll click on this and check it out.
And also,
that was fun.
You're watching it on a dependable platform that your devices can stream.
That's free,
as opposed to USA Swimming's website or it's an ex-college website where it's just like I have to log in and then I can't. It doesn't work on my phone. It's just it cuts out a lot of variables.
Yeah, I know the PWHL in their first season last season for their women's ice hockey league, they were broadcasting every single game on YouTube, and that really helped them grow numbers and interest level because of exactly what you're saying, it's just there and there's no, oh, well, I don't have that channel or I'm not buying that subscription upgrade so that I can watch this one thing. You're attracting new people who otherwise wouldn't be interested or have a way to watch your product.
Mm-hmm. And I think my answer to this of making fields a little more random and providing more variance is racing more. Again, ISL was racing so often that the best athletes, some of them might win often, but some of them might be tired sometimes, or you're going through a training cycle and you have X athlete who's just on a really good high in their training right now, and they pop off and win an event. And the more competition there is, I think the more variance there is, just because the more racing opportunities there are. I think that would add a level of mystique and mystery to the sport. That again, we saw it in the International Swimming League in its 3 seasons, and I think it's just something that would make it a far better product. All right, so we can end that topic there. Next up on Sink or Swim, it's 2025 now. And as we were reviewing the year of swimming that was 2024, we had a poll on SwimSwam of what the biggest storyline for 2024 was. The majority voted for Leon Marchand winning 4 gold medals at his home Olympics as the biggest story in swimming for 2024. Are you sinking or swimming? That is the biggest storyline in the last calendar year. Sophie, let's go to you first.
Yeah, 100% swim. I don't really know what else it would be. I mean, I think that there are certainly like important storylines throughout the year that were well worth following, you know, whether you're talking about like Simone Manuel and Caleb Dressel, like making the Olympic team again, like, but if to connect it back to what we were just talking about, right? Like Marchand transcended swimming, right? Like they were broadcasting his races at other venues in Paris during the Olympic Games. Like he was a household name, certainly in France, and everybody knew who he was. And it was something that they were following. You know, there was the little like the Olympic red zone, Olympic gold zone thing, excuse me. Like, you know, there were little like things that would come up on the corner that would tell you, you know, when Marchand was about to swim, right? Like the same way that they would do for Simone Biles and things like that. So I think that in terms of like the amount of interest that he generated both in the sport and then outside of it as well, like there really isn't a question for me about that story because, you know, it just kept compounding the rare air that he was achieving. You know, it's so rare to win an Olympic gold medal, much less 1, much less 2, 3, and 4. Then in the same games, then in your home games, right? Like
Same
that's
night.
just like the same 2 in the same night. Like it just kind of kept going, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And I think that's a really hard thing to argue with. But I'll be excited to hear if anybody's going to sink it.
David?
I will not sink it. I voted in that poll. I voted for this as the biggest swimming story. Just for so many reasons, right? The fact that, like you were just saying, it's an incredible performance already on its own. And then the fact that it takes the stars really aligning to be able to have not just a home Olympics while you're active, while you're at potentially, who knows where his career is going to go, potentially at your Olympic peak. You know, maybe he'll equal or somehow surpass it in LA. But at the very least, an incredible performance. In addition, you know, like it's not like it would be a special thing if he swam, you know, if he did what he did in Tokyo, in Paris. Yeah, it'd be cool. It's made a final in your home country, but to be on top in your 4 individual events, also to be, you know, win a medal in that medley relay too, do that double, and the fact that so many of his events, like I feel like the main thing that pushed it over top for me, in addition to like just that, the fact that the stars really had to align to be, you know, because he's not going to be able to do that again. Not going to be able to go 4 for 4 in Paris again because those are done. But it's the fact that so many of his swims had their own like story within the story, right? The fact that the 2 fly 2 breast double was, you know, the first in however many years they went and had won 2 individual golds in a night. The fact that he had to go against such loaded fields in both those events, kind of that the record chasing too, you know, him still, you know, just like lighting up the Olympic record books, even if there wasn't any world records in there, you know, that chase against Ryan Lochte's world record line and that 200 IM. And just, there's so many aspects to it that once you know, it's already such an incredible thing with that 4 Olympic golds. And then you add all these extra things on there. It's like, to me, nothing else could really stand up against that.
I'm swimming it as well. But I am curious. So the other topics, some of these are like laughable to me because I voted in this poll and I voted for Leon as well. He got 51% of the votes. Here are the other topics from lowest voted to highest voted. Paris Olympic pool depth controversy, which I think it's kind of fair. U.S. team historically poor Olympic performance, which to me is like how would that? We did fine. It's like, I don't know. People freak out. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me. Gretchen Walsh's long course breakout and short course world's dominance, which I think is a great story, but obviously not the biggest one. Bowman wins NCAA title with Arizona State, then takes Texas job. Again, great story. Definitely not the biggest one. And then the Chinese doping scandal. And I think I was just curious if you asked a casual, someone who knew nothing about swimming, like, did you hear anything about swimming this year? I'm curious if they would have said, oh yeah, wasn't there that Chinese doping thing? Or if they would said, oh yeah, the French guy won all those medals at his home Olympics. And I think had this been any other year aside from an Olympics, the Chinese doping scandal would have beat Leon out for the top spot. Because I think drama will always top, a performance. But because it's the Olympics and because that's so much more highly watched than anything else, especially in swimming, then I'm guessing if you asked someone who has no idea what happened in swimming, they'd say Leon. Anyway, that's my take. That's not a take at all. It's just
I'd actually thought
about
about how, like, because I'm looking at it right now, I'm like, yeah, if it was Worlds, I feel like I might change that, because that definitely is something that, is kind of the opposite of where Marchand is like, this like one incredible thing that then all these other things like hang off of it to like just make it this thing. It was the doping scandal felt a lot more like this like one big thing that then just kind of permeated its way through coverage, right? The fact that any article that is going to mention any of the swimmers that were part of that group is going to call back to that. The amount of times that, when Dan Rowdy on the broadcast, and like one of those swimmers, like they're just giving context to the race, and that's like one of the tidbits. Like, so it's like that thing that just kind of happens at one point, and then it just is around there, and then you also every so often the news about it just kind of pops back up. It's more of a Marchand and his performance, because of the Olympics, is this incredible pedestal giant moment. This was more about one big one and then a bunch of waves that were just felt throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, because I think with Leon, again, not many things in swimming are like make mainstream news, right? Or that like your common person hears about. Common people heard about the Chinese doping scandal. Like that, I feel like that was huge news. I feel like a lot of people knew about that because it was also because it had to do with the Olympics, right? It had to do with the 2021 Olympics. And again, if this was a world championship year, dude wins 4 world titles in home world championships. Like, some people might read about that in mainstream media, but like it would not have been that big of a deal. But again, the Olympics are a big deal, so that's what it is. And our last sink or swim of the day. We mentioned it before, but MacGuire, McDuff, and Adam Chaney have both entered the transfer portal as graduate transfers. Do you think I'm going to change it? I was going to ask, do you think they'll win a national title next year with another team or with any team? But do you think we will see them resurface at another swimming program? Because it's really curious. These are two of Florida's mainstays. They have been huge relay pieces for them. They have broken multiple national. They've won multiple national titles. They've broken enormous relay records. Both of these guys have for the last few years. We also saw this is the third big transfer or departure we've seen from Florida this year, as we saw Luke Whitlock, who is a Olympian. He came to Florida as a freshman this fall, and he is now back at his home club in Indiana training. And none of these swimmers, we don't really know why they left Florida. We don't know if any of them will. I assume Luke Whitlock will continue to swim. We don't know if MacGuire or Adam Chaney are going to continue to swim. So sink or swim, we will see MacGuire, McDuff, or Adam Chaney swim in the future at another university. Sophie?
I'm swimming it. with the little information we have about why they left, why not swim it, right? Especially like they have more eligibility if the House versus NCAA settlement gets approved. College sports are going to look, and swimming in particular, are going to look very different next season. But there's a lot of opportunity for swimmers who can win NCAA titles, set NCAA records, like to profit essentially. And like while they might not be profiting as much as football and basketball players, right? Like there is still some money there on the table. And then you brought up like just how key they've been to Florida's relays over the years, like with the intensity that the men's NCAA championships has taken on, especially this year, and that doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime soon. Like a lot of these top programs would really like to have either or both of their splits to add to their relays. So yeah.
David, what do you think?
Swim, they're both going to SMU. No, if swim, if it was, I'm only swimming it because you said either or. If it was both of them, I'd probably sink it. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if only one of them ends up actually competing. Just, give it, kind of with the mystery of like what exactly is the reason for transferring and stuff like that. The main one I'm hesitant on is MacGuire McDuff. I feel like there's a scenario where he doesn't end up competing, just based on the fact that, when we first heard the news, it was just, I'm not competing anymore.
Right.
And so I feel like that seems a lot more likely to be someone who's like, I was thinking about it, but maybe not. Like, I just would be more hesitant on saying, yep, he absolutely is. I do think that, like Sophie mentioned, it's if you're at a different program and you might just be, hey, I want to swim, well, because, especially if I am, as a graduate transfer, if they are actually going for a grad degree or something like that and want to compete for a year just to have something to do, keep yourself busy rather than, trying to, because sometimes it can be a struggle to just focus exclusively on academics or things like that. And just, if you still have love for the sport and want to keep doing it, otherwise, if you're kind of more disillusioned with it in the short term, be like, I'm not touching that for at least 5 years.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I feel like that with both cases. Adam Chaney this was his COVID 5th year. And at the end of NCAAs last year, at the end of Olympic trials this past summer, he seemed uncertain about his future in swimming. He was very up in the air about whether he was going to come back for a 5th year or not. Then he did, but then he didn't use it. Yeah, like you said, MacGuire McDuff, when he made his departure from Florida, he told us, I'm not competing anymore. And it just brings me pain. I don't know what happened with either of these, but I never like seeing this, because one way or the other, like they were doing great with their swimming and now they're not. And maybe they will make returns. But I could see it seems very plausible that both of them don't return to competition, at least in my eyes. Because they both only have 1 year left. And I'm not sure if they want to commit themselves just to 1 year, especially if something isn't going well for them in terms of swimming. But I guess I will swim it just because I would love to see either or both of them return to the pool. And as Sophie mentioned, there are a ton of schools who would love to have them, and love to have them as contributors. They were both exceptional in the 50 and 100 free. Adam Chaney's got a mean 50 and 100 back. MacGuire McDuff has a rock solid 200 free to add to there. So I hope we see him in the pool again. But yeah, if it was both, I'd probably sink it at this point, just because we don't. Both athletes have responded to our request for comment, neither has really said much. Aside, Adam Chaney said, I don't have anything to say at this point. MacGuire McDuff said, I'm not competing anymore. So we'll see how both of those shake out moving forward, I guess. But that's it for today's breakdown. Sophie and David, thank you so much for shooting the breeze about swimming for the last hour. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will see you next time on the SwimSwam Breakdown.